The New York Times is reporting this tonight about the Biden documents. The documents, which date to Mr. Biden's time as vice president, were found by his personal lawyers on November 2nd when they were packing files at an office at the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement, according to the White House. Officials did not describe precisely how many documents were involved, what kind of information they included, or their level of classification. The White House said in a statement that the White House counsel's office notified the National Archives and Records Administration on the same day the documents were found in a locked closet, and that the agency retrieved them the next morning. Attorney General Merrick Garland has assigned the U.S. Attorney in Chicago, appointed by Donald Trump, John Lausch, to review the situation. Andrew Weissmann and Neil Katyal are back with us, and joining us now is Bradley Moss, a national security attorney and former clerk for the National Security Archive. Bradley Moss, let me begin with you. Indications are that it's probably less than a dozen documents, that the lawyers who found them immediately contacted the White House counsel's office. The White House counsel's office immediately contacted the archives. The archives picked them up the next morning. And then Merrick Garland decided to have a Trump-appointed prosecutor review the situation. What do you make of what we know so far?
Yeah, Lawrence. So the number of documents isn't really what stands out to me, because candidly, any document with classification markings not in a proper location is a bad thing. They never should have been there. But what's different here, and why I'm telling everyone to slow down with these comparisons to Mar-a-Lago and to what Donald Trump is facing, is the absence of any obstructive or concealment efforts. Joe Biden's team, his lawyers, did exactly what you do in this situation. You call up the National Archives, you forward it to them, you get them to pick it up immediately. That's what they did. The Justice Department is playing this very properly, recognizing the political sensitivities. They're having the U.S. Attorney, in Chicago take a look at it. That's fine. This has no relation, no similarity to what Donald Trump did, playing games out in Mar-a-Lago, concealing things, having lawyers submit statements with false information to the Justice Department. This needs to be investigated, but this does not appear to be anything like Donald Trump did.
Andrew Weissmann, your reaction?
So a number of first principles are important. So at the end of the day, depending on what the facts are in both situations, it's really important that if the facts are the same or close, the two should be treated exactly the same. That's what it means to be a nation of laws. Whether you like one person or dislike another person is irrelevant in terms of how you treat them under the law. But I agree with Bradley in terms of what we know so far. I'd say a huge fundamental difference, in addition to what Bradley talked about, is intent. There is a difference in the law about how you treat somebody who accidentally knocks over a glass of milk and somebody who takes that glass and throws it at a person. One is something that is dealt with under the criminal law, and the other, the accidental spilling, is not dealt with under the criminal law at all. So it is really important for people to understand what it means to be a crime. It means that you acted knowingly and with intent. And the crime here is knowingly and with intent improperly retaining classified information. The evidence of that, as Bradley talks about, is in spades with respect to the former president. And so far, what we've learned with respect to the documents that President Biden had when he was former president doesn't appear to be anything close to anything like that. It just seems like the inadvertent retention of documents upon discovery. It was exactly what you'd want somebody to do. He handled it exactly the way you would, and not, as Bradley said, doing everything you can to obstruct the return of those documents.
Neil Katyal, instead of what Trump supporters will want to call an example of everybody does it, it seems that this situation can be used to argue and contrast the difference between the precisely proper way to handle a discovery like this and the criminal way to handle a discovery like this.
That's exactly right, Lawrence. There's a way in which the story tonight actually may reaffirm the need to prosecute Donald Trump. And in order, the Republicans are already marching on TV saying, look, everyone does it and so on. But I think we need to know three things. One, what these documents are. Two, how Biden reacted to it. And three, as Andrew was saying, what is the level of criminal intent? I suspect there's going to be more differences than similarities between Biden and the Trump stolen Mar-a-Lago documents. And at a minimum, I have no doubt that Biden is not going to blatantly disregard a subpoena or defy and harass prosecutors or throw temper tantrums on social media in response to this investigation. And in particular, I think Biden's reaction is so important because did he order full cooperation? It sounds like it, but that's something that investigators will need to get to the bottom of in the next few days. We do know that Donald Trump did the reverse. He sent his attorneys out after the Mar-a-Lago inquiry and to certify that everything had been turned over when that wasn't the case. And that's what led to the raid on his house. And here, the language of the Espionage Act, Lawrence, is really important. It says that it's a crime to, quote, willfully retain sensitive national defense information and fail to deliver it on demand to the officer of the United States entitled to receive it. That's exactly what Donald Trump did. Even if you buy every word in the story and the reporting tonight, there's no allegation whatsoever that is what Joe Biden did. So to me, it's going to be a fundamental difference. And, it doesn't change my mind, at least the stories tonight don't change my mind and my bottom line view that Jack Smith will seek an indictment of Donald Trump for stealing documents and bringing them to Mar-a-Lago.